This is Mark Lane.
This is Robert Groden.
This is Dick Russell.
This is Jim Mars.
This is Lisa Pease.
This is Dr. David Mantic.
This is Cyril Wecht.
This is Jim DiEugenio.
This is Joan Mellon.
This is David Lifton.
This is Jerry Pollicott.
This is Gary Shaw.
This is Bill Kelly.
This is Greg Burnham.
This is Gerald McKnight.
This is Sherry Feaster.
This is Joseph McBride.
This is Bill Davey.
This is Dave Ratcliffe.
This is David Talbot.
This is Doug Horn.
This is Walt Brown.
This is John Barber.
This is Bill Pepper.
This is Richard Belzer.
This is Oliver Stone.
This is Governor Jesse Ventura, and you're listening to Black Op Radio.
Video computers online. Archiving 44K. Initiate sequence.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Server connection confirmed.
T-minus 25 seconds.
Live stream 21 and 20K.
T-minus 20 seconds.
Phone lines are go.
T-minus 15 seconds.
Satellite uplink verified.
T-minus 10 seconds.
Mic check complete. Satellite uplink verified.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Black Op Radio, the voice of political conspiracy research. You're listening to Black Op Radio, the show NSA doesn't want you to hear. Now here is your host, Leno Sanek.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Black Op Radio. This is your host, Len Osanek, and today we are talking to longtime researcher Dr. Cyril Wecht. Hello, Dr. Wecht.
Good evening, Len. Nice to be with you again.
Dr. Wecht, there's been a lot in the news with the document release, and there is an upcoming trial. I'd like to, first of all, let you talk about Kappa, and then the upcoming mock trial at Houston, and we can also just briefly touch on the documents and what they mean and what they have so far to offer researchers.
Yes, Citizens Against Political Assassinations, Kappa. We're putting on a program in conjunction with the South Texas College of Law in Houston, Thursday and Friday, November 16th and 17th. It's going to be a tremendous program, and I can truly say, to my knowledge, nothing like this has been done before. There have been some mock trials. I've participated in a couple myself, but this is the first time that there will be an array of forensic, scientific, and medical experts presenting testimony that would have been given if Lee Harvey Oswald had ever come to trial. Pathology, radiology, neurology, top-notch experts in the different fields, criminalistics, investigative, and so on. We're going to have a tremendous presentation by Robert Tannenbaum, who was Assistant Chief Counsel of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, who will be playing the role of Oswald's defense attorney, and he'll be presenting the witnesses and bringing out the kind of testimony that the American public, really is unaware of. Not that this is secret. It's not that this is something that is brand new, but aside from people like you and other people who are knowledgeable as Warren Commission critic researchers, they're just not familiar with. For example, just take all the hullabaloo of the past week since the records were released and other records were retained. It's all fine in all the articles, pro and con, and what this proves, what it doesn't prove, and so on. But there's hardly anything at all in there dealing with the medical and forensic scientific aspects of this case. Not to take anything away from the other matters that are of great importance. Who was Oswald? What was his relationship to the CIA? What did the CIA know? What was it all about from the time that he was discharged from Atsugi Air Base in Japan, coming home, going to Russia, living there for more than 2 years, marrying Marina, a niece of a KGB colonel, coming back, and all the things that he did, whether it was in New Orleans, going to Mexico City, if indeed he did go. All of that is important, absolutely. What was Tippett doing there? How did he come to be shot? But before you get to any of that, you've got to have the forensic scientific medical evidence that somebody committed a crime, and you do not have that in this case. You do not have evidence of a sole shooter. We have clear evidence of two people shooting and multiple shots, and showing that the whole thing was contrived and faked and misrepresented from the very beginning when they illegally spirited the body of the president out of Dallas and went on to Washington, had the autopsy done by two naval pathologists who had never done a gunshot wound autopsy in their entire careers, missed a bullet wound in the president's neck, misrepresented what was present in the head. And by the way, let me interrupt myself to tell you, Len, and this is an announcement that perhaps, I don't know if you're aware of it, there is a documentary called The Parkland Doctors, which is going to be shown for the first time publicly at our conference in Houston beginning on November 16th. In that movie, 8 of the doctors who were present in the ER that day, November 22nd, 1963, who were standing right there and taking care of the president and looking into his head, looking at the wounds and so on, each one of them is interviewed separately and at some length and in detail. And they specifically talk about what they saw and what was done and what parts of the brain were damaged and so on, significantly, meaningfully, very relevantly different from what is set forth in the autopsy report. So that's what we're going to have. If there's anybody listening that is a true a strong disbeliever of the Warren Commission report and who feels that there's a need to learn more and to participate in this, shall I call it, a movement, the pursuit of a strong belief that justice must be served, try to get down to this program. There is nothing like it, believe me, that is likely to be presented again with these top-notch experts Thursday and Friday, November 16th and 17th at the South Texas College of Law, a very distinguished institution, the largest student body law school in the country. So everybody's invited. There is a charge, depends on whether you're a lawyer or not. And by the way, on Thursday night, at the conclusion of our first day, we're having a wonderful banquet, and the speaker will be Alec Baldwin, who is a very, very strong supporter of all of us, one of the strong disbelievers and rejectors of the Warren Commission report. We're proud to have him. It's going to be a tremendous program.
Okay, Dr. Wecht, well, there's a lot of people who are going to be presenting, and of course, I've talked to Bill Simpich and Larry Schnapf about that. We will be discussing.
Well, Dr. Gary Aguilar, sure, people that you know Lynn so well, and yeah.
We will be discussing that, and people can go to the CAPA website for more information. But specifically, I'd like to ask you, you're very knowledgeable on the subject. Can you tell me what you'd be looking for as after you do your presentation from the different people there speaking? What's something that you're looking forward to?
Well, I'm looking forward to Bob Tannenbaum's 90-minute presentation. I'm looking forward to the presentation of the testimony, condensed as it will be, by the various experts. I'm looking forward to that documentary myself. I've discussed it with my colleagues, Drs. Aguilar and Mantic and Thompson and DeSales and Bob Tannenbaum, who have seen it there at Bob's home in California. So these are the things I'm looking forward to. And I believe, and we're going to, by the way, we're going to have it videotaped. It will be made available later on. One of our colleagues, Randy Benson, is doing this. But I'm looking forward to the program, to the collegiality of being with so many intelligent, wonderful people, true experts, and getting this kind of information out there. It's going to be a very exciting event.
And also the event will be streamed live over the web, so people can get that as well.
Yes. Thank you, Len. Yes, it will be streamed. Now, Len, you'll give information about how they can plug in on all of this, I'm sure. and the follow through. Okay, very good.
Yeah, I think that with Larry Schnapf, and people should just check with the CAPA website for the details on that, kappa-us.org.
Well, Larry is one of the CAPA board of directors, and he's chairman of the program. He's done a great job along with attorney Bill Simpich. They've worked so very, very hard, and we've had great support from the school, which is a co-sponsor of the event. CLE credit is being given, including ethics for attorneys, which makes it very meaningful for them. And it's going to be a full day's program Thursday, the wonderful banquet with the reception and book signing by Alec Baldwin, and then the continuation of the program on Friday, and then it'll go to our mock jury, and we'll wrap up, and then we're all heading over to the wonderful conferences that will have started in Dallas with Deborah Conway and Judith Baker and others. So it's going to be a fantastic 3 or 4 days there. Anybody who is into the JFK assassination, if your pocketbook will permit it and your work schedule will allow it, get yourself down there to Houston, and then traipsing on over to Dallas on Friday and finish up there. You will not regret having invested that kind of time, effort, and money, believe me.
Okay, Dr. Wecht, can you tell me your views, opinions on the recent document release? The anticipation or disappointment? How do you see this document release? What's your opinion?
Well, Ed, I am sure you feel the same way. We're disappointed, and even though Trump is known to change his mind, as of Wednesday evening, October 25th, as far as I know, everybody was assuming that the records would be released. Why he changed his mind, I don't believe. It's not likely that something new was brought to his attention all of a sudden after dinner on Wednesday night. I think, frankly, he was playing eyeball game with the CIA, and finally, they kind of caved a little bit, and he said, "Okay, fellas, all right, I'll let you have a little bit more time to see what's going on, and keep it in mind. Maybe next time you'll do me a small favor." And it's a pure conjecture. I want to make that clear, but I think it's logical and rational, and especially now with what's happening with Mueller's investigation and the indictment.
Well, what I noticed, just looking at it at arm's length, is as soon as Trump made some statements that maybe in the weekend he changed his mind, he would release everything, the shit hit the fan, as it were, and these guys are in trouble, and all Washington talk about now is the Russian money, and that's back on the plate. It's not black. That's back on the table now.
Yes. Yeah, and Len, here, I've asked people this, and when you just ask somebody who may not be knowledgeable about the JFK assassination, just ask them, stop, think a moment, and think, why would then they release, the 2,800 documents, withhold the 200 other documents? What would be the purpose? Does anybody honestly believe for one moment that the release of a document now, 54 years later, is going to in some way compromise our secret agencies, CIA, FBI, like Moscow or Beijing, really are going to be surprised to find out that maybe there were CIA agents in their cities and countries back then? It can have anything to do with what's going on today in the world? This is sheer nonsense. It's clear what is being withheld is critical. Now, how embarrassing it is and how many more doors it opens and how revealing it will be, we don't know for sure. But I can't help but believe, just as a logical, rational person, trying to set aside my own bias, there's just no other explanation for this, because the explanation given is totally spurious, completely illogical, and obviously without merit and validity, that we're going to hurt somebody or compromise something. In what way? My God, look at what comes out every single day in the papers with what's happening here in our country with what comes out involving Russia, China, the Middle East? How come these things aren't compromising our efforts? How come all of these matters that come out aren't in some way damaging our CIA-directed activities internationally and so on? Nothing seems to have any sense of sanctity, any need for sequestration. Only this event, which according to the Warren Commission, everybody to be reminded, was executed, orchestrated, conceived by one person. Nobody else had anything to do with this except Oswald. That's the Warren Commission scenario. Well, if you go with that, then what is the problem? One more thing I want to point out, Len. If all of these self-appointed defenders, supporters of the Warren Commission report, all of these WCR sycophants, if they're so cocksure, and there have been many of them now from Sabato and others that are jumping with joy and glee, cleverly masqueraded under intellectual acuity, if they're so certain that what has been released proves that the Warren Commission was right and there's nothing there, they should be leading the charge for the release of all the documents. The New York Times should be editorializing on this every day, calling for, demanding the release. Let's show these conspiratorial theorists, these conspiratorial lunatics and nuts, let's show them that they're wrong. Those people, the Warren Commission supporters, they should be leading the charge to get these materials out there. And one more point. I just referred to the conspiratorialists using their language. I want to remind, Len, all of your listeners, we, my friend, are in the majority, whether it's 61% or 80% or 75%. Every national poll since 1967, the first poll taken that I can recall, has shown that a majority of American people do not accept the Warren Commission report. So this idea of denigrating in dismissive, insulting fashion those of us who attack the Warren Commission report as being false and cover-up, they need to be reminded, people need to be told repeatedly that the disbelievers, we are the majority, and we have stood firm now for more than half a century. What does that tell you about how this issue stands in the eyes of the American public, even 2 generations later?
Well, the poverty is that they were supposed to have 25 years to get this together, and then they couldn't even get that done. You know, they have to say, oh, we need more time now, more time. More time for what? I mean, they're dragging their heels, and that is a kind of a revelation in itself, that they don't want what they did known.
Right. You're right.
My other observation is that I can't believe that they dug out Gerald Posner at a retirement for this. I mean, every time they have something, they don't bring out someone like yourself, Tannenbaum, Jim Eugenio, Jim Douglas, the people, who were requesting the Freedom of Information Act, the people that were interested and digging into it, not the people that are hiding and covering it up and they want it to go away. And every time I see Gerald Posner on, they bring him out and say, we all know Oswald did it, so these details are rather, mundane, pointless, whatever. I mean, it lulls people to sleep saying, yeah, there's nothing there.
An excellent point. All the interviews have been with people like Posner and Sabato and Shannon and so on. Isn't that interesting? They have not reached out to the knowledgeable, credible witnesses, whether they be investigative, academic, medical, forensic, scientific. Not any of them reached out to Dr. Gary Aguilar, Dr. David Mantik, Dr. Michael Chesser, Dr. Josiah Thompson, Bob Tannenbaum, the former assistant chief counsel of the ASCA, or me as a forensic pathologist. Not, except there are a few exceptions. I was on Anderson Cooper briefly on Friday night, and I've done all kinds of interviews locally and some nationally, but the major newspapers, major news media, and the major networks and so on, none of them, to my knowledge, reached out for any of the strong critics of the Warren Commission report. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that absolutely disgusting?
Well, I think we have to do something. We have to somehow hold the press accountable to cover what is real news. And these documents should be news. They should have the interest of the American people rather than $100,000 of Russians, Facebook fixed the election, rigged the election.
What we have to do, Len, is stay tenaciously, aggressively in touch with this, and that's why programs like yours are so important. So we can't do anything about this 6-month interlude, but let us stay tuned and stay on their backs and keep breathing on their necks, and just follow up. That's why our program, November 16th and 17th in November in Houston, is going to be so very, very important, because that's part of the ongoing assault that we must continue to make on that totally fictional, nonsensical, absurd Warren Commission report.
Now, Dr. Wecht, what could you say to encourage people to check out the CAPA website and maybe even become a member and join CAPA and give us a little idea of what it stands for?
Well, they should look at the CAPA website, Len. If you can give them that information, feel free to get in touch with any of the people there, any of the CAPA board of directors. And with regard to the program, Larry Schnapf, but any of the people that you know so well, Andrew Craig and Bill Kelly and Jerry Polikoff, any of us, and just follow through. That's the thing to do, and become a member of CAPA. The membership amount is quite small, and that's the best way to stay tuned and be a member of this wonderful organization that is, pursuing this and will be leading the charge in the months ahead.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Wecht, for making time for Black Op Radio.
Thank you,
The mock trial coming up in November, and also CAPA. Behind that, check out the CAPA website.
Yeah, thank you so much, Len. Thank you.
Okay, Cyril. Well, thank you so much for taking time. Before we wrap up, is there anything that you did want to bring up that I didn't get to?
No, you've given me plenty of opportunity to get across the points. I thank you so much, and look forward to speaking with you again. But thank you, Len. Thank you very much.
Okay, good night, Dr. Wecht.
Excellent. Thanks, man.
JFK Lancer presents the 24th Annual November in Dallas Conference, November 17th, 18th, and 19th, 2017. Since 1996, JFK Lancer has proudly hosted a yearly conference in Dallas, Texas. Each year, we honor the legacy of President Kennedy and strive to better understand the facts of his assassination. Speakers and guests from all over the globe come together for this exciting event to share the latest findings in the case. This year, 2017, our focus will be on the 3,000 plus government documents that are being released just months before this year's conference. The theme for this year's overall conference will be that of disconnection. The disconnection of the official story from the historical reality. Scheduled speakers this year include Russ Baker, Malcolm Blunt, Dr. Michael Chesser, Andrew Craig, Mary Mormon, Gary Shaw, Jeff Morley, Gary Moore, John Newman, Casey Quinlan, Bill Simpich, Stu Wexler, and many more. For a complete conference schedule, check with jfklancer.com. Ticket price includes sessions by over a dozen speakers throughout the 3-day conference. And there will also be book signings, tons of opportunities to ask your questions, and a remembrance service held at Dealey Plaza. Sunday, after the Dealey Plaza ceremony, Brian Edwards and Casey Quinlan will take you on a charter bus tour of several historic JFK spots around Dallas. Their extensive knowledge, coupled with their highly entertaining style, makes for an exciting and rewarding tour. This tour will fill up fast, so don't wait. The conference is again at the famous Adolphus Hotel. Mention you were with JFK Lancer. So don't miss this year's November in Dallas Conference, November 17th, 18th, and 19th, 2017. For information on ticket prices, speaker updates, and conference details, please visit jfklancer.com. That's jfklancer.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another segment of Black Op Radio. This is your host, Len Osanek. Today we are speaking to Bill Simpich, civil rights attorney, author, researcher is the main title I guess you like to go by because you have a good interest in JFK research. So welcome to the show, Bill.
Thanks, Len. I appreciate it. And a big shout out to all the researchers out there, because I do love my life as a civil rights attorney, but I also love life as a spelunker like everybody else. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. What we're going to do today is, in the news, is this latest JFK Documents Dump. I don't know if we want to call it a dump much, as it's a limited hangout is probably more like it. But
I like that. Yeah.
yeah, what are some of the comments and what are you hearing about this so far, as this is just a couple of days into it?
Well, I had fun writing a little article about it for Reader Supported News, and I called it something like Trump promises the JFK files, but the big dogs ate his homework. And that's really the way I felt about the whole thing. He only released 52 new withheld in full documents out of 3,000. And he only released 2,900 out of the pile of 30,000 withheld in part. So basically, we got 10% of the whole Megillah, very little of the new stuff. And I think what's happened here is neither team, neither Trump's team nor the intelligence agency's team, was really ready for this fight. I don't think anybody took it seriously enough. And I think part of it is that the whole U.S. government right now is at such a dysfunctional ebb. I mean, Congress is barely functioning, and many of the agencies have critical roles unfilled, and other bureaucrats, digging their heels against Trump for a variety of reasons. So it's really chaotic. Nobody was ready for this after 25 years.
I find that hard to believe, thinking, like you mentioned, after 25 years, they're not ready for it. What did they think? They would just be going over it the night before?
I think both sides thought the other side was going to give in. And on my reading, I think it was Trump's team that gave in because they really just don't have the stomach for what they thought they had the stomach for. So I think there was a big clash in the last few days over in Washington, D.C. about this.
I don't want to bug you about it, but what makes you think it's a clash?
Why do I think it's a clash? Well, because of the way this happened. All the documents were ready to go over at National Archives. They were ready to push the button and release everything. They were just waiting for the president.
Well, do you think that? Do you think that CIA really was going to let the archives hand over everything?
No, I don't. And I think the CIA and the FBI and the military all had their hands in saying no for various reasons. Trump wanted to make a political plus out of this whole thing, and it really kind of turned into a political minus for him. I think he saw this as someplace where he could just bulldoze these people, and I think he found out at the end that he could not bulldoze them.
Everyone assumes that Roger Stone is behind it because Roger Stone's the only one probably surrounding Trump that had any interest in it, and I doubt that, no slight or disrespect, but I just doubt that Donald Trump knows anything about the case, whereas Roger Stone knows a lot about it.
I agree, but I think Trump saw this, as did Stone, as a tonic for Trump's troops. I think they saw this as a relatively easy win, and I think they found out, by the time the day rolled around, that the intelligence agencies were not going to be bulldozed on this.
Yeah, well, it's just strange to me. It's strange because, what are they going to reveal? They're going to reveal Army, CIA, military intelligence behind the assassination of John F. Kennedy, not a lone ex-Marine. So,
well, and those operational files alone of the CIA officials, those things are there's lots and lots of powerful material in there on the JFK case and other cases. And I just think that their hair turned white at the prospect of those things going out unredacted. So that's where I think a lot of the battle is going to be about, is those operational files for Phillips and Harvey and their playmates.
well, it's interesting. We'll see what's going to happen this week and next week on that front. So people are looking through some of them. I mean, I made a brief look, and I was very disappointed that they were not zipped together. You have to download each one individually.
Yes.
So I'm going to have to go through like 29,000 files and download the PDF just to look at it. I mean, earlier in July, I did download some that were a zip file, and I got the folder, and then I went through it, and I started clicking on, anyway. And I took a couple of snapshots of TV because I was really encouraged to see CNN saying the word Lee Oswald and CIA in the same sentence. And I put them up on the Facebook page, and CIA and Oswald, right? Alleged links, and it was just ironic.
Yeah.
Funny, to me, yeah, of course the CIA's behind it, right? After all, right, he fired Alan Dulles and
Cabell and Cabell's brother, Earl Cabell, mayor of Dallas. And now we find out from the earlier July dump that he was an asset of the CIA.
Yep,
Yeah.
that was a good find. And we'll have others. I'm quite confident that we will have a lot better picture in the next few months. But I always encourage people, too, to keep digging through the older files, because we really haven't done our homework there yet either. There's a lot of that material that remains unanalyzed. I just saw one today, for example, that I had been looking for a long time, about this woman, Teresa Proenza, who saw Oswald allegedly in the Cuban embassy. And she said, she couldn't really talk to him because she doesn't speak very good English. The upshot I saw today was that because she saw Oswald and because of all the events that happened afterwards, there was a story in the file saying that Fidel threatened to execute her because of her interaction with Oswald, however brief it was. Because it wasn't in the consulate, it was in the embassy. And the story went on that Oswald in the embassy made a threat to kill Kennedy, which wound up in the FBI files. And this story has been unresolved for 54 years, and it caused a real flap. We were talking about it today online. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. And I'm really glad, in a sense, that Trump created this 180-day window, because now he's basically given the research community 6 months of airtime on, media forums that we ordinarily would only have access to for a couple of days.
Still 180 days after 25 years. I mean, I'm not holding my breath.
No, there's no reason to hold your breath. But I think if there's a time for a breakthrough, this is a very good time, these next 6 months.
We shall see. Now, the reason I wanted to talk to you tonight was you are going to be speaking in Houston, and I wanted to give you some time to help promote this and just go over what's going to happen and what people should expect from it. I was calling it the trial of Lee Harvey Oswald. So why don't you let listeners know what exactly is going to go on?
Okay. What we're going to do is a presentation on the case in a trial format. The prosecution is going to have a brief presentation, if you will, with, an hour and a half, maybe a witness, not certain about the witness at this point, but certainly able to call up witness testimony from the past, like Robert Frazier. It seems the prosecution case is going to focus largely on the firearms issue. And I think one of the reasons why is, without getting lost in the weeds here, is that people in this country, even though we have a lot of guns in the United States, it's still relatively an area for the experts, in terms of what weapon has the power to do what, et cetera. And once you get the discussion in that arena, I think ordinary people often fall back and say, okay, I'll let the gun experts figure this out. When actually, there's no mystery to any of this, and any articulate person should be able to tell you what the issues are. And if there's good video and audio along with it, which we will have there, we'll have state-of-the-art technology. That's one of the things I'm very excited about, because our team's going to have a number of experts we're going to present on many different aspects of the case. And is this a good time, Len, to roll out what those experts will be and what they'll be talking about?
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know we'll have Cyril Wecht there, and most everybody here knows who Cyril is, but he will be testifying on the three main areas of the case, which are Daley Plaza, Parkland Hospital, and Bethesda Naval Hospital. And what he'll be discussing the single bullet theory, of course, and the location of the wounds, and how the wounds were initially described. And as a pathologist, Cyril's still at 88. He's still traveling around the United States and Canada doing autopsies. He's done, tens of thousands of autopsies. So he's incredibly skilled in this area and very articulate and knows the case inside out. And presenting the case on behalf of Cyril and the Kappa team on Thursday will be Bob Tannenbaum from the HSCA investigation. He was there alongside Richard Sprague at the initial part of the investigation, where they were really getting somewhere and cutting the CIA and FBI no favors. And as a result of their determined approach to getting to the bottom of it, Sprague was fired by the Congressional Committee due to some nonsense that really was not deserved and had nothing really to do with Dick Sprague at all. And after that happened, Mr. Tannenbaum decided that the fix was in. And he, stayed long enough for an orderly transition, and then he stepped away from the investigation because he was convinced at that point that they simply were not serious, and that the new guy, Mr. Blakey, had an agenda, and it was to bring down the mafia and nobody else. And it turns out, Mr. Blakey didn't do much. So with Bob taking care of Thursday, he's going to do an hour and a half presentation, and then we're going to see the entire movie, The Parkland Doctors, which runs about, somewhere between 80 and 90 minutes, is a documentary just about ready for release. And this will be one of the first times anybody's going to get to see it. So that's going to be very exciting because it's coming from the doctors' mouths, both back then and now. I think it's going to be compelling. And then Cyril will take the helm and discuss those areas I described. And then we will have Gary Aguilar, who will be focusing on the 399 bullet and talking about that for some length of time. And, we're trying to keep it all pretty short. Most of these presentations are going to be 20 minutes, 10 minutes of cross-examination, and then move on. So it'll be like boom, boom, boom. Michael Chesser will be talking about the X-rays. David Mantic will be talking about the densitometry issues, and specifically he'll be talking about the Harper's fragment. And all these issues are going to go to primarily the case that there was more than one gunman. And then we're going to do day 2, and Larry Schnapf and I are going to do this portion of the presentation and trial. I'm going to start off with a discussion presentation, if you will, about Oswald's whereabouts, as well as on his background in the Soviet Union and coming, real kind of lightning round biography type description, of his various, fingerprints of intelligence throughout those last 4 years of his life, culminating with his actions, those last few weeks. And on that day, November 22nd, where he was in the book depository and in the moments that follow. And then Brian Edwards, who I know a lot of the listeners know as well, he's a former law enforcement in Kansas, a police officer, and spent a fair amount of time on the firing range himself. And he's going to be talking about the rifle and its capabilities. And I think Brian's going to be able to do a very good job demonstrating this rifle simply, could not have done the job that they say. And he's also, a police procedures expert. So he's going to get into police procedures at some length, both then and now, and we're going to focus on the chain of custody in particular and show that the bullets, the fragments, the shells, they don't seem to have been kept in any way in a proper manner. So anybody could have altered the count at any time because they were being carried in envelopes left unopened.
Yeah, you're talking about the chain of custody.
Exactly. And
look, I'm going to make a link to this. This is from the Southern Texas College of Law, Houston, and it's the State of Texas versus Lee Harvey Oswald, November 16th, 17th, 2017. And so I'll make a link to that. So if people want to find out further details, that's where they go.
Thank you. That's great. And, the CAPA website will have more information on it as well. And then we'll have Cliff Spiegelman, who will talk about bullet analysis as well. Larry's going to be doing his direct examination. And then we're going to have Larry Rivera, who's a lot of people know as well with the Oswald Innocence Campaign. And he's going to be focusing on 2 photographs, in specific, the famous backyard photo with Oswald with the gun and the magazines and the pistol and all. And then the famous man in the doorway photo where the the eternal question since '63 still, carries on. Is this Oswald or is it Lovelady? And the great thing about Larry's presentation is he's a computer techie, and he uses Photoshop, but this time you're going to see Photoshop used for good instead of for evil, to help solve mysteries rather than create forgeries. So I think it's going to be a powerful, to the point, good presentation, and hopefully the first of more to come. This is not going to be your classic mock trial where we're going to have a jury and the ruling's going to really matter. And that's because we've front loaded this, frankly, to give the defense most of the time, because we really wanted an opportunity to put together a presentation and see how well it ran, and then try to fine tune it further, hopefully in the months and years to come.
Right. Now, what is one or two things that you're looking forward to seeing from and hearing from other people presenting?
Oh, what am I looking forward to? Well, that's a good question. Since I'm working closely with Larry and Brian, I'm really looking forward to theirs, but I know, I don't have the same anticipation about what they're going to say. Because I know less about the people I haven't, like Cliff Spiegelman and David Mantic, who I know personally, and David is, I know will do a terrific presentation. And I'm really curious to hear what they and Michael Chesser are going to say. Gary Aguilar is going to speak, and I've worked on his material for a long time, but he's going to have some material rebutting Lucian Haig that I'm looking forward to as well.
So it seems well-rounded, not just the medical evidence.
Right. We tried, and I left out Don Thomas, the acoustics expert, who has done a lot of work over the years analyzing the various acoustic studies and rebuttal that the Justice Department did after the HSEA study of '78. And yeah, we tried to listen to everybody, and without tilting towards anybody's point of view, we tried to get a good cross section of the research community in on this project, and I think we've done it. It may not be perfect. I'm sure it's going to have some holes, but I think we're going to have a very solid presentation that we're all going to be proud of.
Are people going to have any avenue to talk to some of these people presenting? Is there a get-together afterwards or something? Or
there is. We're going to have a get-together on Thursday. It's going to be a little dinner, and of all people, Alec Baldwin is going to be the headliner. And Alec Baldwin is like us. He is a member of the JFK critical community and feels very strongly on the subject. And he's going to be a good draw. Hopefully this is going to raise money for Kappa. We've been getting a fair number of signups, and that side, the economic side is going well. It's going to be live streamed, and the live streaming, so you can watch from the comfort of your home. Kappa's got the info on that, and so does the school. And for you lawyers out there who might be interested, you can get CLE credits, continuing legal education credits. If you're in the United States, I don't know if it's transferable there or not. Might be. In any case, these are very important for lawyers, because it's a education requirement that we have to fulfill. And to be able to do it by sitting in on a trial like this is, it's a great, wonderful way to get your credits taken care of. I can tell you a lot of these programs are deadly boring, and this one's going to be filled with legal information as well as factual information. So I think it's really going to be something. We're going to have a presentation, by the way, on ethics of the last 2 or 3 hours while the jury's out. And again, the jury decision is not going to be that important because of the nature of this trial. But we want to be filming the jury and see how the jury is discussing these questions. So that's going to be really interesting. And while the jury is deliberating, we're going to have John Orr. I bet you know who John Orr is, Lem. John Orr is a federal prosecutor. He lives in Georgia. He's retired. And he actually got all the way to Janet Reno and got the Justice Department to agree to a test of one of the bullets. There was a piece of skin on the bullet, and he asked for a DNA test on it. And the FBI came back and said that the results were inconclusive about, whose DNA it was, Kennedy or Connally, which I find kind of preposterous. I mean, generally when you have a DNA test, it's generally yes or no. It's like off or on, 0 or 1. So anyway, John's furious about it. He wants to do another test and get the FBI out of it. And he's got a lot to say on the case. He studied it at length. He's a 2-shooter person. We're going to make a 3-shooter presentation. His presentation is a 2-shooter presentation, and he thinks Oswald was one of the shooters. We don't. But and so for that reason, we didn't ask. We thought John would be perfect for the ethics panel, because he understands the log jams and difficulties that you have in trying to get these cases through these enormous bureaucracies that we have in government and into the light of day. And at the same time, since his theory is a little different, we didn't want to undercut our own case, but we wanted to give him an opportunity to propound his theory in a different setting. So that'll be during the ethics panel, and I think that'll be very interesting too.
Now, what was the genesis of this mock trial? And I don't like the word mock, but
no.
presentation.
Right? Mock trials. It's a useful term. It's an old term, and I was in part of the genesis of it because I wanted and still want a real hard-hitting mock trial. I'm happy with this, what we're going to do, but I'm looking forward to something more voracious as time goes on. And this was Larry Schnapf came up to me. He saw the article I wrote about Oswald never probably even having to go to a jury because the evidence is so weak against him with all the problems of chain of custody and the rest that we could talk about if you like. But
yeah, go ahead.
So that's the genesis, and then Kappa took it on with Larry, and and Cyril led a lot of the charge, and Bob Tannenbaum came on. So we're delighted at the team we've got here. And in terms of the evidence, I don't mind talking about the evidence because, after all, this is a contest for the truth, not a contest to hide the ball. And the number one thing for me is when you look at this case, you want to be thinking about the shells. For example, where did the shells come from? And are we certain they're the right shells? And with both the shells in the 6th floor and the Tippett shells, there's no good chain of custody. The shells on the 6th floor were carried around in an open envelope. And you just can't do that. And people made representations saying, "Oh, I made those markings, on the first day." And in fact, they had to turn around later and say, "Actually, no, I didn't do that." There's similar problems with the shells in the Tippett murder case. In fact, Jim Lavelle, who a lot of people probably remember as the man in the white hat who was holding on to Oswald when he was shot, Jim Lavelle agreed to Joe McBride. You can read it right in his book. He said, they would never have been able to make the case of the shells against Oswald because there was no markings made on the shells in some instances, and or they didn't match. So it's just a case of OMG regarding the shells. And then when you try to track the bullets, the most famous one, of course, is the 399 bullet. That one had a very checkered history where nobody could agree on a time sequence. everybody had a different version of when it was delivered and who signed for it and the rest of it. And in most of all the instances of the carrying of the 399 bullet, there's no initials showing that it was passed off from person A to person B. It's a travesty. There's really nothing more that can be said about this evidence except it's simply not trustworthy. And this is the evidence that we hope in the next 6 months to next couple of years, we're able to get across to the media. Because the media, as we know, is deaf, dumb, and blind when it comes to the real evidence in this case. They don't want to hear about it, and when you try to tell them about it, they put their fingers in your ear and they start shouting. Because it's too, they say it's too complicated. We got a newspaper to get out tomorrow. Well, what use is it having a newspaper at all if you're not interested in covering the news? And now this news has turned into history. You ought to at least be able to record, what the historians are saying, And at this juncture, only a few historians are willing to take a hard look. Their numbers are gradually increasing because the old guard is literally dying off. The people who had an financial investment in this case, a lot of these people just aren't here anymore. So I have hope. But I do think that this next period of time is crucial if we want to be on the right side of the way history is reported on.
Well, it's strange. This case is a real education, even for just the facts of the assassination, but of how the media has treated it. And even people have belittled these documents being released, or, whatever the limited hangout of documents is, where they say, well, this is just enough to keep the tinfoil hat crowd happy, and they think there's nothing in this, right? It's a shame.
Well, it's a shame, but what we're able to find in times like this is where the truly critical minds are. And we are seeing good people, popping out of the media, like Brian Bender at the Boston Globe and Pete Williams with NBC News. NBC News did a terrible job covering this case, but Pete Williams is doing a great job, following the ball. And so is Brian Bender. And and then I saw something remarkable on CNN the other day where their local media guy was saying there was all these journalists who tried to cover the Kennedy case properly and ask the hard questions back in 1963, and most of these people are dead now, and their careers were ruined. And that's the problem with this case is, there's institutional memory among historians and journalists alike that this is a career ender for a lot of people, because people who really try to do the right thing and follow this case wind up not getting career advancements, or, their careers go into decline. And happily, it's not a charged case in the same way, but there's still that institutional memory that leads people away from this case. So I think what we have to focus on is looking for those bright lights that build the critical community, because those bright lights are out there.
Right, and some of these institutions are really failing, and they're not getting the numbers they want to be. They're very jealous of somebody like Alex Jones or something who's got a lot of listeners, but it's fake news, and it's going back and forth. But fake news started from 1963 on with the reporting of what really went on with the assassination of John F. Kennedy.
Yeah. Well, I would be even a little tougher and say we've had fake news our entire history in the United States. I won't speak for Canada. The 63 propelled it in a way that few events do propel it from bad to worse. Within a decade after, or 15 years after 1963, we lost the fairness doctrine, which was one of the few tools that we had to, keep the powerful forces in line and enable people without as much power to get equal time. And we've also had to live through another period of, concentration of media. So we, in the United States now, we have 5 media sources control 90% of the news. And that kind of thing has happened before in this country, and they've had to do massive antitrust to roll it back. And I think that's what it's going to take in this country. If you don't, either that or it's going to be decline and breakdown.
Well, one good thing for people who listen to Black Op Radio, totally independent, just news gathering and archiving interviews on this topic, at least, people can find it through the internet. And a lot of other corporate places are, they're name calling this kind of research, just debasing it and saying it's pointless. And yet a lot of people are tuning into Black Op Radio each week just to hear what's new.
Well, that's right. And I've got my article up there on Op-Ed News. If people want to read about what some of the evidence we're going to present at this trial, just type in Simpich and Warren Commission, and it'll lead you right to my article.
Yeah, I'll make a link to it, right?
Okay, great. And that's wonderful. Similarly, it might be good to have a link to Kappa. Kappa's got its own website, and Kappa has a lot of good information out there.
Right. Well, that's where people can find the application to, because it does cost money to go to this.
Right. It does cost money. It is a fundraiser for Kappa. And so that's the long and the short of it. Len, what more can I give you guys?
No, that's fine. I want to make sure you had ample time to just promote it ahead of time and let people know what's going to go on. And then I guess maybe as a closing thought, what do you hope comes out of this? What is something that maybe next year, I'm talking to you next year, you can say, we look back, we did good here.
What I want to see is more projects like this of Kennedy researchers and people in the critical community in general working together instead of arguing with one another. All of us in this group, we have slightly different opinions about the assassination, but we've got so much in common on this, and working together. There's some difficulties, there's some strengths, there's some opportunities. It's a lot of fun, and what I hope to see 12 months from now is more events like this. More competitive mock trials, more presentations, more forums where people can discuss the JFK case and other cases like it, the Bobby Kennedy case, the Malcolm X case, other cases of more recent vintage, and social problems in general. These cases, sometimes they're mysteries, sometimes they're headaches, but they're filled with vitality, of critical thinking that we need if we're going to move forward as a people, as a society, as a planet. And these are the big questions. And if we can address the big questions, especially places where we made serious mistakes in the past, it really augurs well for the future. That's the kind of thing I want to see.
Well, I think it's going to grow grassroots like Black Op Radio and Kappa and other organizations you mentioned, because it's very disappointing that when I turn on the TV and I see channel after channel bringing up Gerald Posner to talk about how there's nothing in these documents. And further, we all know Lee Oswald shot him, so why are people even going through these documents? I mean, it's really pathetic.
Well, it was funny. The editor of my newspaper, Reader Supported News, turned to me today after 10 years of arguing about this. He was like, I give up. It's obviously there's got to be more than one gunman. Why else would they be hiding this for so long? He doesn't know much about the case, but he knows it doesn't make any sense to be hiding it this long.
Or they would be waving the evidence around like a flag. They'd say, here it is. There's a picture of him in the window. There he did it,
Yeah, none of that.
Bill, I'd like to have you on again to talk about your latest book, which I was just briefly talking about, and I'd like to discuss that, but we'll do that another time.
I look forward to that, Len. That'll be fun.
It sounds like you're really enjoying this, so that's something good and refreshing about JFK research. So good luck in Houston. We'll talk soon, and keep me in the loop. Anything new, email me.
I will.
And if there's any announcements to the research community, just do them on Black Op Radio.
Will do. Thank you, Len. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.
JFK Lancer presents the 24th Annual November in Dallas Conference, November 17th, 18th, and 19th, 2017. Since 1996, JFK Lancer has proudly hosted a yearly conference in Dallas, Texas. Each year, we honor the legacy of President Kennedy and strive to better understand the facts of his assassination. Speakers and guests from all over the globe come together for this exciting event to share the latest findings in the case. This year, 2017, our focus will be on the 3,000 plus government documents that are being released just months before this year's conference. The theme for this year's overall conference will be that of disconnection. The disconnection of the official story from the historical reality. Scheduled speakers this year include Russ Baker, Malcolm Blunt, Dr. Michael Chesser, Andrew Craig, Mary Mormon, Gary Shaw, Jeff Morley, Gary Moore, John Newman, Casey Quinlan, Bill Simpich, Stu Wexler, and many more. For a complete conference schedule, check with jfklancer.com. Ticket price includes sessions by over a dozen speakers throughout the 3-day conference. And there will also be book signings, tons of opportunities to ask your questions, and a remembrance service held at Dealey Plaza. Sunday, after the Dealey Plaza ceremony, Brian Edwards and Casey Quinlan will take you on a charter bus tour of several historic JFK spots around Dallas. Their extensive knowledge, coupled with their highly entertaining style, makes for an exciting and rewarding tour. This tour will fill up fast, so don't wait. The conference is again at the famous Adolphus Hotel. Mention you were with JFK Lancer. So don't miss this year's November in Dallas conference, November 17th, 18th, and 19th, 2017. For information on ticket prices, speaker updates, and conference details, please visit jfklancer.com. That's jfklancer.com. jfklancer.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Black Op Radio. This is your host, Len Osanek. This segment, we're speaking to Larry Schnapf, lawyer working with Kappa, and also the trial that's coming up in Houston. Welcome to the show again, Larry.
Thank you very much.
Well, there's several things that we have to talk about today. One of them is Kappa, one of them is the trial, and also these documents. Everyone's talking about what's going on with the documents. Let's get to that at the end. Let's start off with the trial, the mock trial, a presentation as it was told to me. What do you want people to know about that? And
it's going to be November 16th and 17th. That's Thursday and Friday. It'll be held at the South Texas College of Law in Houston, which is the second oldest law school in Texas, and it's one of the largest law schools in the country. In addition to the on-site attendance, we are also going to be streaming it live. If anyone wants to do that, they can register at the law school's website, and the website address is South Texas College of Law, stcl.edu/Oswald, and you go to that page, and you can either register to go for on-site attendance or to register to watch the event via streaming. We're also going to record it, so people that may be attending the JFK conferences in Dallas and won't be able to watch on Friday, they could watch the whole thing at a later date. So the mock trial is going to be 2 days, and there have been other mock trials in the past, but the difference with this mock trial, and by the way, all but one of the mock trials in the past resulted in a hung jury. The one mock trial that resulted in a conviction was the 1986 mock trial that had been aired on, I think it was Court TV, with Jerry Spence and Vincent Bugliosi, and it was...
I think that was on BBC.
Right, BBC, and then somehow I forgot how it was broadcast here in the States. But it's widely accepted within the legal community that Jerry Spence wasn't prepared for this mock trial. He didn't take it as seriously as Vincent did, and he tried to use his old country boy approach, which didn't work. But this is the first mock trial where the defense counsel are very steeped in the nuances of the case. So, in the past, when there have been mock trials, they just had attorneys agree to be defense counsel, and they didn't really understand this is a very complex case. So this is a great experience. We have a real judge, a real criminal law judge. She's the presiding judge from one of the criminal courts in Harris County, which is the Houston County. We have a trial lawyer who's serving as prosecutor, who has his own team of. He's got a criminal lawyer, and both sides have teams of law students to help us with our research. So I'll have a 2-day trial. The first day is going to be focusing. Bob Tannenbaum will be the lead counsel for the first day, and Bob is the former deputy counsel to the House Select Assassinations Committee. So he's going to be leading the first day, and the witnesses are going to be Dr. Cyril Wecht, Gary Aguilar, David Mantic, Mike Chesser, and also Don Thomas, who will be the one non-medical witness, and he'll be talking about the acoustics. And then on day 2, Bill Simpich and I will be handling. So day 1 is going to be more about the medical evidence, the autopsy, the single bullet, and the grassy knoll. Day 2 is going to be exclusively focused on Oswald. Is Oswald the gunman? Or is he a lone gunman? Was he gunman at all? And so Bill Simpich and I will be handling that. And as part of our witnesses, we will be having Brian Edwards, who is a former police officer and a private investigator. He'll be going over the chain of custody, and then which a lot of the evidence is rather suspect. Now, we did get some rulings. We've had extensive pretrial motion practice already. And we basically made motions to exclude Marina Oswald's testimony, to exclude all of the evidence that was collected at the Payne's residence on November 22nd on grounds of an illegal search, because they, and actually it's both the Payne's residence and the boarding house where Oswald was staying. We made a motion to exclude all that evidence on the grounds that it was an illegal search. We also made a motion to exclude the holes that were found on the 6th floor. And what we agreed that we would suspend the rules of evidence so that, and there'll be an instruction to the jury that we have challenged this evidence, but that it would the questions about the evidence would go towards the weight and not be excluded, except for Marina Oswald's testimony. That will be excluded because that was based on the spousal privilege that was in effect in 1963. So spouses were not allowed to testify against their spouses, and unless there was a communication that was public. So, for example, the conversations that Oswald allegedly had with Marina about the Walker shooting, the note that he wrote to her, all that evidence is going to be excluded because that violates the spousal privilege. And so that's going to set up an interesting dynamic. Much of the Warren Commission's case was premised on the evidence and testimony of Marina Oswald, because a lot of the other evidence is
well, that was in the Warren Commission, but he didn't really have a case.
Right. So, but that's an interesting question. You have the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, whose court was famous for protecting civil rights, is allowed the commission that he was heading to trample on Oswald's rights. So, and this is one of the most precious rights that are available, precious privileges that is available. I mean, it goes to the sanctity of the wedding, of the marriage.
Yeah. Now let me ask you about the jury. Where are they from?
Okay. So the jury. Oh, by the way, and to let you all also know, the other witness that we're having on day 2 is Cliff Spiegelman. Cliff Spiegelman is a professor at Texas A&M, and he was on the commission that studied the lead bullet. Comparative lead bullet analysis, and that led to the conclusion that that cannot be used to point to a specific bullet. and also he'll be talking about about forensic evidence. What we're doing is we are taking what we've learned from the Innocence Project and from the 2009 report from the NSA. I'm sorry, the NAS, and the 2004 lead bullet study that was done through the National Research Council, and we're using all that we learned there to apply to the evidence that we used to link Oswald to the assassination. To answer your question, we have engaged a jury consultant. We originally were going to get some jurors from the Harris County jury pool, but because of the hurricane, the courthouse was damaged, and they postponed trials until actually next month. And so there was going to be no jury pool from which to collect our jurors from. So we have engaged a jury consultant who will pull together 12 jurors that will be representative of the Houston area, demographically, and they will be our jurors.
Now, what are some of the goals of the trial? I mean, you could make a case either way, you win or you lose, but what can you help maybe show the public, the media, about this trial? Of course, in the past, we've heard in from absentia from the past, trials, famous trials throughout but the Lindbergh kidnapping or other trials that happened. So it's basically, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you hope that will happen? What do you hope to gain?
Well, what we're trying to do is there's been a lot of statements made and claims made about different types of evidence, and so what we're trying to do is create a vehicle, which would be a judicial setting, to test the evidence. And so on the first day, we're using the most recent advances in medical investigations, examinations, computer advances to kind of look at the medical evidence, for example, and look at it through the lens of the 21st century and test and try to establish what the record really is. There's been a lot of, even this week, following the release of the records, there was a lot of stuff on the internet making claims about certain evidence. So we're going to use a judicial setting to sort of try to determine what's junk science and what's not junk science. And in particular, that's also the second day with Oswald. We made these motions knowing that because this is a mock trial and it's a 2-day event, that the judge was not going to, hold a full-fledged evidentiary hearing on this stuff because we only have 2 days. The point was to set a historical record that shows that challenges the admissibility or the quality of this evidence. And so the evidence that is going to be used, we're going to test it for the first time. No one, in the past, most people assume that the holes, were legitimately discovered. And for example, the cartridges found on the 6th floor that were legitimately discovered, they just assume that, and we're going to go and look at the chain of evidence. We're going to look at the chain of evidence on the single bullet that supposedly pierced.
Yeah, I've had a lot of authors on over the years, and people would say, "Oh, if this ever went to court, it would have been thrown out." Right.
Right.
So this is the kind of thing you hope to say, no, this would not be thrown out.
Or even if it was not thrown out, the fact that there are questions about its provenance will then be something the jury will consider when they review the evidence. We also have a very interesting ethics presentation that's going to be outside of the mock trial because of time constraints, but John Orr, who is a former prosecutor for the Department of Justice, he had come up with a study in 1995, which he's a very senior prosecutor in the Department of Justice out of the Atlanta office. And he had done a study that he found some organic material that was on one of the fragments, bullet fragments found in the front of the limo. And he determined it was organic material and determined that it was muscle material. And so he did a report to Janet Reno, who then forwarded to the FBI to do follow-up. And in addition to that, he did an animation. He worked with Peter Russo, who's a producer. And in 2013, Fox News, of all places, aired this program as a 50th anniversary, which talked about the organic material and what we're trying to, what he wants to do is get someone to do a DNA test on it. And the FBI sort of just has not really responded to his request. It was forwarded from Janet Reno's office to the FBI, and they kind of papered it over. So he's really focused on getting, getting attention to this. And number two, his animation suggested that there was a second gunman on top of the county courts building. And we're going to show that animation so that we think there's a second gunman from the rear. And according to John Orr, it's a perfect shot to the back of the head.
But what you're describing then shows a real failing in the American justice system, that it's taken 54 years. You have to have a mock trial to really help illuminate what the FBI and the Justice Department should have been doing from day one.
Yes, the mock trial is almost making a mockery of the justice system.
Right.
And the ethics presentation, the theme of the ethics presentation is what are the duties of a prosecutor, i.e. the FBI and Department of Justice in particular, when you are confronted with new information or the science advances. And so this is part of what we're advancing at. And so Bob Tannenbaum, when he starts the presentation on day one, is going to be talking about the ethical failures of the Warren Commission and the House of Select Assassinations Committee. And then John's going to conclude it with current ongoing failures, ethical failures. So we're going to kind of box it on both ends that, what are the obligations of a prosecutor? And it's pretty clear, we think, that, when you're giving this information, and the thinking is what's happening here is that one of the reasons that the FBI does not want to relook at this is because, it's not just this case. You get the biggest case in the last century, the President of the United States. If you botch that case, then every other case, it calls into question their laboratory results, their investigation, and even though the people that occupy those offices now, most of them weren't even born when John Kennedy was murdered, there's still this institutional reluctance to admit that there was a mistake.
Well, you're making a polite case for it. I think it's darker than that. I mean, imagine the poverty of that. They go, we just don't want the public to know how badly we've done, and we'll keep bumbling along like we've done because who's going to call us? Who's going to point this out, right?
Right, right. Well, yeah, I'm trying to present this, in an objective and polite way, but there is this institutional reluctance. And people sometimes will ask, well, I can't believe that the government would hide something. Well, because all the bureaucrats try to protect themselves, protect their institutions. The institution becomes more important than the rights of the citizens. So they're more concerned about protecting themselves. And back in Hoover's day, they were more concerned about protecting their reputation and not being embarrassed that they let Oswald, assuming that, if you think that Oswald was the gunman, letting him through their fingers, that they had him on, and so there's this continuing reluctance to basically admit there's a mistake because it would bring embarrassment to the institution, and then secondly, it could affect their ability to continue to prosecute new cases.
Yeah, well, in that case, I say what institution?
Right. But, anyway, we're going to hammer them on both ends, both backwards and going forwards. And so John Orr was a great addition. We're also going to have Larry Rivera, by the way, who has worked with Ralph Sink on the backyard photos and also on the Oswald in the, whether he's in the doorway or not. So we're going to have a little computerized presentation about those, analyze those photos under computer techniques. So we're hitting all the major points. As I said, if this was a real trial, a lot of this, we would have filed motions to exclude a lot of this evidence, but at least we did it for the record. We have briefs, and then those will all be online that will be available for people to view when this is over. And a copy of the mock trial is the sixth floor has agreed to keep a DVD copy in its library.
And they agreed to, eh?
Yes,
Big
they've
deal.
agreed to.
You know what I mean? Like, as
Yeah.
if they're kind of any spearhead of anything truthful.
Yeah, and we're this is and we're kind of viewing this as a dry run in one respect, because there are potentially real legal avenues to try to do something about this cold case.
Well,
And
let's
so,
talk about that in a minute. I've got a note here. Let's talk about that. I want to get back a little bit now to Kappa, because Kappa is more or less spearheading this. Tell me a little bit about Kappa and how you relate to that and what you see as the goals of Kappa.
So Kappa is the Citizens Against Political Assassination, and we were formed about a year and a half ago, and we have a number of, I would say, governing goals that are the part of a critical mission, and obviously one of them was to get the release of the records. But we also have a legal committee, and we are looking for a variety of things that we could do from a legal standpoint to try to try to solve some of the issues and try to break some bottlenecks, and so this mock trial was the project that the legal committee decided to do for this year, and South Texas College of Law has been very kind to co-sponsor that. They've given us their space, and this is all at our risk. So we are really hoping that people will be able to sign up for this, so they can not only reimburse Kappa for its costs for this project, but also for future projects. We also have Alec Baldwin coming Thursday night. We have a banquet, which is between the 2 days of the mock trial, and Alec Baldwin will be speaking on why the Kennedy assassination is still relevant today. And so I'll be having a moderated talk with him, and he's very excited about this. He actually went out of his way. He was on a book tour, and when he found out about this, he rearranged his schedule so that he would be available to be our keynote speaker on Thursday night.
Okay, well, this is kappa-us.org. I'll make a link to it. kappa-us.org, where people can find more about Kappa and how to sign up for that and what they can do to contribute. And also they may find more things of interest there that might encourage them, inspire anyway. So there's, at the website, there's various committees and different missions. And like you say, for this year, the 2017 event is the big one is this, right?
Yeah, and we have other committees. We are working. We had a Sunshine Week event in March to highlight the October 26th deadline. There is a group that is working on trying to brainstorm the next step and to put pressure on Congress and also on the executive to try to finish the release of the records. We are looking into legal remedies that might be available. The JFK Act itself does not create a right of enforcement by a private citizen. However, it has what is known in the legal field as a savings clause, which means it preserves the rights that might exist in other federal statutes. And so we are looking into what other federal statutes might provide an ability for a private citizen to enforce what would appear to be a violation of the JFK Act. The CIA and the FBI clearly had 25 years to prepare for the October 26th release date. It appears that they spent more time trying to tee up the mass media than they did to review the documents, because there's been enormous misstatements in the media about the number of records that have been released, and it's just been incredible.
What's been very disappointing is to see them bring out Gerald Posner or anyone who is a Warren Commission supporter on that. I mean, the whole idea of bringing out these records is for the people who made the Freedom of Information requests. The people who are interested are not the Gerald Posners and the World is Flat Society.
Yeah, Gerald Posner, Larry Sabato, and Phil Sheenan seem to be the three musketeers that are always rolled out by all of the mainstream media. And what I've been doing is every time I see an article that is distorting what's going on or distorts the truth, I do a Twitter, and I have created two hashtags. I have one hashtag that says JFK fake news, and the other hashtag is mass media JFK lies. So every time I see an article or a news program that's on a website, I share it on Twitter with that hashtag. I'm trying to get the attention of those producers and the hosts that they love to have good positive social media. Well, I'm giving them bad social media when they don't have a balanced approach, and they have one-sided guests that are just talking about the Warren Commission and supporting it. Then I'm gonna flag them, and I encourage anyone else that sees articles that are not balanced and are distorting the truth to do the same thing. To sort of, they don't have to use my hashtags, but they should, flag those articles and those programs as what they are, which is junk news, fake news.
Now, you mentioned this document release, back from 1992, I think, based on Oliver Stone's film. They said if it's true that Lee Oswald did it, you should be able to release the files and show the American public just how he did it. And yet, there's been a real failing here, like you mentioned, 25 years or longer, that should have been public. And many people have said something to the effect that those documents belong to us. The American people paid for that through our government. We should be able to see our own documents. What's your view on this and any avenue to fight back?
Well, it does, it's a very curious situation that if Lee Oswald is the person that the government said he is, then where's the national security grounds, particularly 54 years later? For a man that supposedly was a lone nut and antisocial, he had a lot of contacts with people that were in intelligence related activities. And it's kind of curious that this kind of person would have so many contacts that 54 years later, the government's still afraid of disclosing all the documents relating, that involve the assassination.
Yeah, a loner hanging out on street corners, handing out propaganda, or going on TV shows to state his case. The whole thing.
I mean, it's laughable that. I mean, even when they say, "Well, we're trying to protect methods and sources," well, you mean that what they did in 1963 is really still important. I mean, we have much more sophisticated methods and sources now. So it's just unbelievable. It just really raises. I think it raises more questions than it does anything else as to why are they still so nervous about this, that they won't release these documents. So we're currently exploring what remedies might be available. For example, there may be some whistleblower statutes, but we're in the process of doing that, and also reaching out to Congress. CAPA is to try to put pressure. We did have Senator Grassley from Iowa, I think it's Iowa, had introduced some legislation before the October 26th date, and he was obviously very upset. So we're trying to move this along. But we're not only going to, try to go through the administrative basis, but we're exploring the possibility of some legal challenges to try to force this 54 years is long enough.
And so if someone is to join CAPA, they will get on a newsletter and be kept abreast of all these kind of goings on and how they might be able to help with going through documents or whatever.
Yes,
situations.
We actually have a number of committees, and we're actively looking for people to become more involved with CAPA. We have a board, and we have committees, and we always could use more active members who are enthusiastic to help run down information. And one of the benefits for people, anyone that, for example, becomes a Kappa member, will get a significant discount for the mock trial and for the Alec Baldwin dinner. And then going forward, we have blasts that we send out. We have a website, and plus we send various periodic announcements to our membership whenever anything new is developed. And this, the next 6 months are going to be very interesting, because the president gave the intelligence community 6 months to complete their review. The Attorney General said on Sunday that they're going to try to go as fast as possible, and they're probably going to have a rolling release, which means they'll probably be periodically releasing documents for the next 6 months. So there's going to be a lot of news. I will say that this really, we had more news about the JFK assassination over the last couple days than we've heard in years, and it's probably since the 50th anniversary.
I think that's a little bit due to Roger Stone being interested in the case and having the president's ear. And then I kind of watched with amusement that before the weekend, Trump hinted that, well, that's it. Maybe Saturday morning, I think what we're going to do is we're just going to release everything. Like, there's no reason for it. And then all of a sudden, Monday morning, Washington's all caught up in this Russian scandal again. Oh, we know they for that $100,000 they rigged the election and that. And I couldn't even watch CNN anymore, because regardless, when you think of how many hundreds of millions that Hillary spent on it, you really think that for $100,000 of Facebook ads, an election was thrown? And I don't, it doesn't make sense. And of course, if you're caught up, if you're a bitter rival, either Republican or Democrat, you're really entrenched in the position. But I'm in Canada, and I just watch and I go, you got to be kidding me, right? The people who didn't like Hillary voted for Trump. And even if they agree or didn't agree, they voted against her. And, with the Electoral College in that, those are the people who are propping up a candidate. Well, anyway, that's a different topic, right? A different topic. So
the other interesting thing is, there's now becoming this, I guess we would call the limited hangout position, which is the fallback position of Sheenan and Sabato, that they kind of say, well, if there was a conspiracy, if somebody was behind Oswald, it was probably Russia or Cuba. Which then brings us to another interesting, you follow what they're thinking along, they're thinking. So you're telling me that in 1964, the President of the United States learns, let's say, that the Russians were behind the assassination of the president, but he does nothing about it. And then people now are saying the Russians interfere with our election. So it's like 54 years later, the Russians are still meddling with our politics. I mean, it's just a crazy way to look at the thing.
I saw this. I can't even put words to it, but it was some kind of ad by Morgan Freeman saying, "We are at war." I mean, wow. Blaming that, he says Putin's, he wants to anyway, like I said, let's not talk about that. But I am interested if you have something, or your legal committees come up with something that you can say, listen, the American public are just too tired with being told it's national security. The national security should be who assassinated our leader. Right. And if it's Lee Oswald, we want the documents. Show us. He never had a trial. Right. And when you can't, and even somebody was saying that when it's like years and years later, and now they're still fighting, we need more time. After 25 years, we need another 6 months.
And they've already destroyed so many records. It's like we know they destroyed Oswald's Office of Naval Intelligence records. The Secret Service destroyed some records. So what are they possibly holding back? The stuff they're holding back relate to New Orleans with the guy from the CIA. I can never pronounce his name right. Johannes or whatever.
Johannides.
Yes, Johannides. So they held that back. They held back all the records dealing with David Atlee Phillips. So, that's where, if there's any kind of organized effort, or if somehow somebody was behind Oswald, that's where you would find that information. Yet they're still holding that back.
All right.
So that's the heart of the stuff, and we're gonna, we are gonna, within a couple of weeks, we're gonna figure out what legal avenues there might be, and then we will have to decide. We may have to do a GoFundMe, or depending on what it is, because right now we have a lot of resources. All the lawyers that are working on the mock trial, we're all putting this in, without any charge. Our witnesses are all flying into the event. They're paying for their own hotels. They're paying for their airfare. They're not getting any fees for the time they're putting in. Everyone is doing this because of their commitment to transparency and to get the truth out. With that, we still have expenses. So hopefully the mock trial will pay for itself, and maybe more, so that we could start funding these other initiatives that we want to fund.
Keep in touch with Black Op Radio so that I can help promote what Kappa is doing, so more people know what you're doing.
I will.
Yeah.
This is a great. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, because we know a lot of people listen to you, and people that are concerned about these issues. You have their ear, so we really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, so I brought up the trial, the Kappa website, and also your ongoing committees in the future. And one of the things we'll be trying to see how you can organize a better legal rebuttal to when they say we're going to redact these, or a lot of records held in full. Anyway, I'm interested to see what kind of progress you have, or ideas from people writing into you and at least joining Kappa.
Yeah, we're having internal emails every day. Like Bill Kelly has a resolution that he's preparing that he wants to send to Congress, and I found some information about what some lawyers looked at 20 years ago, and now we're comparing to what statutes and cases have occurred since then. Plus, we have some new statutes. So this is going to be something that's ongoing, and doing this all while trying to maintain a law practice.
Larry, thank you very much for your time. Just before we wrap up, is there anything you wanted to bring up, you wanted to mention I didn't get to?
No, I think we covered the mock trial and Kappa, and I think that's it. Just thank you for the opportunity to let you and your audience know what we're doing. And I hope everyone, if you can't make it, if you can't watch it live, we will have an opportunity to, we're going to record the event. We will have it, I'll let you know, Lenny, when we have, basically we'll have like an internet, probably Vimeo or something, where people will be able to download it and watch the mock trial. Yeah,
it was like that with Cyril Wecht's conference, that after the fact you could order various lectures and that very cheaply too, So
yeah.
I think they were like $3.99 each, so you could listen to Bob Tannenbaum give his 1 hour presentation and that.
Yeah, I think we would try to have the whole. Obviously, one way to do it is to have each witness have a separate feed, but that doesn't. I think we'll just have one feed to download. Day one and then day two, and because it's 2 full days from 9 to 5. To be
determined, so people can check with the Kappa website and what to do with that.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much, Larry, for sharing tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Talk to you soon.
JFK Lancer presents the 24th Annual November in Dallas Conference, November 17th, 18th, and 19th, 2017. Since 1996, JFK Lancer has proudly hosted a yearly conference in Dallas, Texas. Each year, we honor the legacy of President Kennedy and strive to better understand the facts of his assassination. Speakers and guests from all over the globe come together for this exciting event to share the latest findings in the case. This year, 2017, our focus will be on the 3,000 plus government documents that are being released just months before this year's conference. The theme for this year's overall conference will be that of disconnection. The disconnection of the official story from the historical reality. Scheduled speakers this year include Russ Baker, Malcolm Blunt, Dr. Michael Chesser, Andrew Craig, Mary Moorman, Gary Shaw, Jeff Morley, Gary Moore, John Newman, Casey Quinlan, Bill Simpich, Stu Wexler, and many more. For a complete conference schedule, check with jfklancer.com. Ticket price includes sessions by over a dozen speakers throughout the 3-day conference. And there will also be book signings, tons of opportunities to ask your questions, and a remembrance service held at Dealey Plaza. Sunday, after the Dealey Plaza ceremony, Brian Edwards and Casey Quinlan will take you on a charter bus tour of several historic JFK spots around Dallas. Their extensive knowledge, coupled with their highly entertaining style, makes for an exciting and rewarding tour. This tour will fill up fast, so don't wait. The conference is again at the famous Adolphus Hotel. Mention you were with JFK Lancer. So don't miss this year's November in Dallas conference, November 17th, 18th, and 19th, 2017. For information on ticket prices, speaker updates, and conference details, please visit jfklancer.com. That's jfklancer.com. jfklancer.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another segment of Black Op Radio. Today we have filmmaker and media personality John Barber. Hello, John. Glad to be talking to you again.
How are you? I'm here in Las Vegas, Nevada, which some people are calling Dealey Plaza with slot machines. And I presume you're up in Vancouver, where I will be this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yes, you're going to visit the Black Op Radio studio, and we're going to do a showing of your new film, the American Media and the Second Assassination of John F. Kennedy. And so a lot of people are excited about that. Not only are we showing it, but we're going to be...
They're not as excited as I am. And how on earth are you going to get 50 to 70 people in that studio of yours?
It's no problem. I think it's going to be standing room only, to tell you the truth.
Oh, my goodness gracious. But didn't you tell me one time you had a bagpipe band of 200 in that place?
Yeah, we have to do it in 3 shifts.
That is really, really funny. Well, I tell you, I'm really, aside from re-meeting you again and thanking you again for the enormous contributions you made to the film and continue to help with. And then especially, I must tell you, aside from the fact that I get moved every time I see the film, and I have seen it 100 times, and still it's spellbinding to me, what I really am looking forward to is the Q&A following the screening, which I understand you're going to put out live on your YouTube channel, because often that leads to some of the most interesting exchanges.
Yes, that's true. We are going to be streaming live. I think we'll stream a little before, because I'm sure that there'll be some nice comments before the film is made, and people might want to see that. And then maybe we'll show a minute or two of the intro of the film, and then urge people to go to Amazon and buy it. It's what is it, like $2.99 or $3.99?
No, it's only $1.99. I made it
$1.99. Come on, people. So anyway, that's what we'll do.
Well, I did that. And the main reason for doing that is to make it available to anybody, because every American has to see this film. That's the first thing the New York critic said when he saw the film. A kid that I don't even know. He said, this has to be seen by every American. And I must tell you, for me, Len, it's sort of my thank you card to the United States of America, because this country gave this vagrant, troublemaking immigrant not only a life and a career, okay? And so this is my thank you to an America that sadly no longer exists. And this film will be around for a long, long, long time.
Okay, well, one thing I want people to know is that when I stream it live on YouTube, it goes to the Black Op Radio YouTube channel. So please, if you hear this, go to Black Op Radio channel on YouTube. We'll make a link and click the subscribe button, because if you're on a cell phone or your smartphone or computer, when we go live, you'll get a little notice that'll pop up and say Black Op Radio is live right now. And that's how you'll know. And many times I subscribe to some things where I didn't know about it, and all of a sudden, oh, there's Eddie. He's live. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. It's right now. Okay, great. So
what I think I sent you a note about this, but what I might suggest for you, because I love the way the credits of the film were designed. Also, the fact that 50 some odd people through GoFundMe, strangers from all over the world, sent in money to help me make this movie, and their names are there. And I love the design, which was created by Gino Munari, about putting it on the Dallas newspaper headlines. I mean, it really is smart. So you could show the last couple of minutes live, and then we could start the Q&A, and of course you would open the Q&A.
Well, it'll be there. People are going to be there to talk to you. So it's in Vancouver, actually New Westminster. But if you're in the Lower Mainland, Vancouver area, drop on down to the studio. There's no charge. It's a free event, and if you can't make it, watch it on YouTube.
And the other thing I might add, because with the release of all these files, which I don't think will reveal anything, you know what they are, it's the CIA's aluminum siding to protect our outlaw government for the murder of John Kennedy. But the release of these files by President Trump, regardless of what they reveal, and except some of them do reveal considerable spying on Jim Garrison. That file is just amazing. But this is going to be the last hurrah for the pursuit of justice for John Kennedy, and a major opportunity for me to bring attention to the film, which totally and definitively documents Jim Garrison's investigation. And it supports one of the most important documents, as you know, is in the film 3 times, and that's the one that was released in 1993 because of the Records Act. And the only reason the Records Act exists is because the outrage by the public after they saw Oliver Stone's excellent movie. I mean, the Congress has never done anything about this murder. They suppressed the investigation initially, and they had a secret Warren Commission for 9 months. And then Geraldo Rivera shows the Zapruder film in 1975. Congress is forced to open the House Select Committee, which is sabotaged by the CIA. They fire Richard Sprague, who said he's going to solve the murder. And now, after Oliver's film again in 1993, they passed the Records Act. But Congress never wanted to do anything. The press never wanted to do anything. Only citizens like yourself, by the thousands and thousands, who did this unbelievable research from Mark Lane on, even Harold Weisberg, even though I got a bone to pick with him because he helped sabotage Oliver Stone's movie. But I don't necessarily want to get into that. But look what's happened. I've been invited November 14th to speak at the Press Club to the McClendon Group in Washington, D.C. I will be in D.C. for 10 days. In June of 1963, John Kennedy gave his great peace speech at American University. A professor at American University by the name of Chris Simpson wants me to screen the film there for students. We have put together a poster that is going to be an absolute collector's item, so I'm speaking there. And then a place called Mont Mansion, which supports progressive causes. We're going to be screening it between 2 and 5. There is going to be invitations sent to all members of Congress to come and see it free. And I am so enthused about that. And there will be a national press release about all of this. Now, let's say you have 70 people crowded into your studio, and let's say 100 students show up at American University or 100 people at Mott House. That's 300 people will see the movie. But 250,000 will read the press release. And I guarantee you that when the people see this film and your Q&A, Len, the word of mouth about this will spread like wildfire. It is a monster hit on Amazon. And I get no support except from what they call this assassinations community. And I got this lovely letter from Joan Mellon the other day, and she said she's giving up on these people because they're all egos. They're all so engrossed in their own undertakings, they don't realize that it is so easy to resolve this. First of all, it's an open case at the Justice Department. And simply, all you have to do is reverse Bill Clinton's Communications Act, which put 95% of all our media into the hands of 6 corporations, which Jim Garrison said through Project Mockingbird was to change foreign policy to create fake wars with fake news, which plague us today. When John Kennedy was killed in 1963, only a corporation could only own 5 stations. There were 1,500 different owners of television and radio stations then. It no longer exists. And I screened this for a major newscaster, #1 anchor woman in Reno. And she gasped during the film. And I said to her afterwards, why were you gasping? Because you didn't gasp at the Zapruder film. She said, John, I'm a major news anchor. I majored in journalism. I didn't know there was such a thing as a fairness doctrine or an equal time clause. And I did not know that a company could only own 5 stations. So I am enormously proud of this movie. And I'm enormously grateful to you for your input and your help and your continuing support. So there you go.
Okay, great. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Vancouver, and I hope we get a good turnout for your film at the studio, and we have a good Q&A. And by the way, it has a live chat feature as well on the live stream, so people will be able to chat back and forth and send in questions, which we can make note of and also read to you.
Oh, that's great. You mean if there's somebody in Dallas, let's say, who wants to ask a question, they can email you and then you announce their name and the question?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. How exciting is that? Do you want to know something? That proves, Len, that our form of government is totally outmoded. We could have instant democracy. You could get rid of every member of Congress, everyone in the Senate, and all of us would have a fingerprint, and we have an ID number, which is our Social Security number. And all they would have to do is put up for referendum to the 320 million Americans or the 250 who are eligible to vote. Hey, do you want to send some troops into Niger? And we could all vote, hey, no, we don't need troops in Niger. And look at this. Sadly, if those soldiers had not been killed, we wouldn't know what skullduggery the American government is up to. Where else are they that we don't know about? I mean, anybody's an idiot who thinks they live in a democracy. We live in an oligarchy. It's a giant club, as George Carlin said. It's a major club to which we don't belong. So you can tell from the tone of my voice that I'm really enthusiastic and excited about seeing you, seeing the audience, rewatching the film, and doing the Q&A. So again, thank you, Len.
Okay, well, that is Sunday, November 5th, 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So it's 9 o'clock the East Coast, and the film will be on for an hour and a half, so you won't be watching it until the Q&A till 10:30. It will be recorded, though, so people can watch it after the fact. But if you want to watch it live and chat and send in questions or comments, that'll be happening. So that's this Sunday, November 5th, 6 o'clock, and John Barber will be there. We'll start a little early, and I hope everything works out.
You know, it will work out. And even if it doesn't, I remember when we started Real People, and it was live. And at one time, the cue card guy dropped the cue cards, and Sarah Purcell and Skip Stevenson were at a loss live on the air. And George Slaughter, whose nickname was Crazy George, as a matter of fact, that was the license plate on his Mercedes. When we went to commercial break, he tore the phone out of the wall, and he was screaming about how he was destroyed because they fumbled. And I rushed over to him, and I grabbed him. I had to calm him down, and I said, George, are you kidding? This is real. This proves that we're live. This is the best thing that could have happened. It shows that we're real, so that even if something does get screwed up, all of that is wonderful. You know what? It proves we're real. So there you go.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll be seeing you Saturday. Just send me an email to confirm the time and that. And for everybody else, please go to the Black Op Radio YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. That way you will be automatically notified if we go live. You're not going to get a bunch of junk email or anything. I don't do that on the YouTube channel. It sends you a notification that somebody's live.
Well, the nicest thing about all of this, Len, is it's going to be fun, and it's going to be very, very informative. So thank you so much. I will see you on Saturday morning.
And by the way, I would say about 70% of the people who are coming, they're all new people. It was very encouraging. They've just seen the movie JFK, or they've just seen something, And when I told them that I was going to have a live viewing at the studio, it's not the old people who know all the facts. There's a lot of new people coming.
Well,
So
get
that's
this.
encouraging.
A year ago, almost to this date, when I was showed the first rough cut at the Texas Theater in Dallas, there were about 270 people there. It got a spontaneous standing ovation, first of all, for about 5 minutes. I was so broken up, I couldn't even do the Q&A. It got applause and cheers and boos at the villains during the movie. It was a great screening. But 70% of those people had not been born when John Kennedy was murdered. And I would say that 90% of the people who are sending, if people Google Amazon, and then there are over 60 major reviews unsolicited from these people raving about the film. Half a dozen men said they were brought to tears by the movie. And I'm telling you, these people were not born when John Kennedy was killed. So there's something sort of metaphysical in the air. Somehow or another, people know there had been a better America. There had been a better president, the only peace president, John Kennedy. When John Kennedy, he had a dinner at the White House. He invited Nobel Prize winners, Peabody winners, Ed Murrow winners, poet laureates. So he had a room full of intellectuals. And his toast was, ladies and gentlemen, this room has never seen this much brain power since Thomas Jefferson dined here alone. Could you imagine something that brilliant coming from a George Bush or a Bill Clinton or a Donald Trump? Donald Trump couldn't even tweet that, for crying out loud. That's why my movie is my thank you gift for America. America will never allow another Jim Garrison. They will never allow another John Kennedy. They will never allow another Martin Luther King. But Jim Garrison said, one man armed with the truth will defeat any army. And the truth is in this movie. And again, I can't wait to see your people there and do the Q&A, and especially to see you and your wife again.
All right, good. All right, everyone. Well, there you go. This Sunday, November 5th, 6 p.m., check the live stream. All right,
Wonderful.
John. We'll see
Thank you.
Send
see
me
you
the email.
Saturday.
Send me the email with your itinerary again.
Okay, if I can find it.
Well, or you can phone me when you get in town, right? I just want to make sure I'm there at the airport.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
JFK Lancer presents the 24th Annual November in Dallas Conference, November 17th, 18th, and 19th, 2017. Since 1996, JFK Lancer has proudly hosted a yearly conference in Dallas, Texas. Each year, we honor the legacy of President Kennedy and strive to better understand the facts of his assassination. Speakers and guests from all over the globe come together for this exciting event to share the latest findings in the case. This year, 2017, our focus will be on the 3,000 plus government documents that are being released just months before this year's conference. The theme for this year's overall conference will be that of disconnection. The disconnection of the official story from the historical reality. Scheduled speakers this year include Russ Baker, Malcolm Blunt, Dr. Michael Chesser, Andrew Craig, Mary Mormon, Gary Shaw, Jeff Morley, Gary Moore, John Newman, Casey Quinlan, Bill Simpich, Stu Wexler, and many more. For a complete conference schedule, check with jfklancer.com. Ticket price includes sessions by over a dozen speakers throughout the 3-day conference. And there will also be book signings, tons of opportunities to ask your questions, and a remembrance service held at Dealey Plaza. Sunday, after the Dealey Plaza ceremony, Brian Edwards and Casey Quinlan will take you on a charter bus tour of several historic JFK spots around Dallas. Their extensive knowledge, coupled with their highly entertaining style, makes for an exciting and rewarding tour. This tour will fill up fast, so don't wait. The conference is again at the famous Adolphus Hotel. Mention you were with JFK Lancer. So don't miss this year's November in Dallas conference, November 17th, 18th, and 19th, 2017. For information on ticket prices, speaker updates, and conference details, please visit jfklancer.com. That's jfklancer.com.